than the Red Bull, and been racing against Williams as well. Williams having a few problems at the moment, as we'll be hearing later on. Here's Patrick Friesacher in the Minardi, and Ted Kravitz has some news about him.
And it's an evil handling Minardi, I'm sorry to say. Friesacher's had turn-in understeer and then to power oversteer on the exit. The back of the car's been threatening to break away in the high-speed corners, Martin. They changed the rear suspension. They'd rather give him understeer and have him not fly off the road.
Yeah, that's the worst case scenario, where you've got a bit of understeer and a bit of oversteer, because the breakaway, the snap point where it changes over, you always have to wait for it and adjust your driving, adjust your corner entry speed, and you're driving every metre of the tarmac instead of looking down the road. You go slower and slower and slower.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that will affect the drivers here. The wind is still fairly gusty, but not as strong as it was this morning in free practice, but the track temperature has gone up 10 degrees since the end of the pre-practice session, and that's something that they'll have to have considered and made changes to the car. We saw in France last weekend how Ferrari were caught out on race day because the conditions got much hotter and the car handled completely differently.
Well, the wind speed's 2.2 meters per second. Not sure whether that's good, bad or indifferent, but what I do know is that it's right into the tail of the cars, turning in to Beckett and turning into Stowe, two of the most critical areas of the racetrack, and they will lose downforce. They get less downforce in those conditions, so that may affect lap times, maybe giving us a bit of understanding of why we're not seeing such fast times as we expected.
Yeah, the sessions have been slower at the start. Friesacher then just over 3 seconds behind. How do you evaluate his season?
Difficult to know. You can stand out in a Minardi. Paul Stoddart there has given a lot of young drivers a great flying start in Formula One. Alonso, of course. Mark Webber would be another one. Friesacher, I'd have to look at him at a 6 or 7 out of 10, probably a 6 out of 10 so far this season.
Well, he's 6-4 up against this man, his teammate Christijan Albers, in qualifying so far this season. Certainly Friesacher's year has been blighted by retirement, 6 retirements in the Grand Prix. Albers on 1 points finish, of course, for both the drivers at Indianapolis, where only 6 cars took part. This young man stepped out of touring cars to come into Formula One. It's always been his dream, and some people would say to move from a winning touring car situation into a back-of-the-grid Formula One is a mistake, but he's enjoying himself, and so far trying to match up with Friesacher.
Yeah, as Jackie Stewart would say, he looks like he's trying to hang wallpaper on a windy day with the window open as he's churning away on the steering wheel. There is that turn-in understeer, the front slides, and then snap oversteer. Turn-in oversteer, turn-in understeer, power oversteer on the exit. Horrible conditions and difficult to change the car for, fundamentally. You can do it, takes a long time.
What about a first half-term report for him as we enter the second half of the season, riding on board with Christijan Albers? How have you evaluated him?
About the same as Friesacher. I think a couple of times he's really stood out as being very fast, but Friesacher too, so I guess you'd have to say 6 out of 10.
Certainly 1 or 2 of his qualifying performances have caught the eye. Always very difficult these days when they carry race fuel in qualifying to evaluate just how good everyone's been, because every 10 kilos of fuel around a track like this is worth about 0.3 of a second. Across the line then goes Christijan Albers to go 3rd in front of Friesacher, and that makes it 6-5 in qualifying to Friesacher. So Albers has got 1 back.
And by a second, a solid and complete second too, is he ahead of his teammate. So a very good effort there from Albers. Didn't look a particularly great lap. He was on the dirt at 1 point, but clearly made the best of a bad job.